Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH, solutions for every challenge, equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us here for This Week in Agribusiness. Spring is in the air and farmers are amped up to get in and get those crops planted. The USDA reported last week that Texas is 57% completed with their corn planting, and states north of them are going to get underway shortly. Joining us now for a planting update is meteorologist Greg Solier. Greg, as you look out over the remainder of the month of April, what do you expect to see weather-wise?
Well, kind of a weakening process to El Nino is well underway. Jet stream should begin to reflect that here. And we think in the next probably 10 to 15 to 18 days, a marked change in the weather pattern will have taken place. And here's sort of a snapshot of the remainder of April. Note how the jet stream winds are in from a west to east orientation. The big upper air troughs through California, the southern plains into the Ohio Valley replaced with this setup. So soil temperatures and air temperatures, well, it's back to normal here across much of the heartland, the Corn Belt. Warmth, if you will, over this part of the country. Boy, things are well ahead of schedule with ornamental trees, areas of flowering trees and shrubs, and crop progress as well in this particular part of the country, and warmth across areas from the Missouri on westward. Back into dry time, though, this is not unusual in mid to late April. El Nino winding down as well for the south and western states, and there's some added drought relief, and we'll take it for these winter wheat fields across the central and southern plains down through Dixie and the southeastern states. But again, a noticeable change, Mike, into a less frequent outbreak of moisture, we'll put it that way, for much of the Corn Belt and Midwest too.
Let's move us into May. We'll be really running hard with planting by the time we get into there. Greg, are temperatures going to be favorable?
Yeah, they will. There's no real super cold air in sight. We'll get these little tentacles of cold that drop in through the Sioux, the northeast, and New England, but they are on a retreatment to the north and northeast. Again, generally speaking, it's kind of a west or west-northwest to east-southeast jet stream pattern. These big upper troughs, these what we call high and large latitude, full longitude type systems where they buckle up and down across the country. That is out with an additional weakening of El Nino. Warmth over the western and southern states down through Dixie and in through Florida as well. So much of the heartland, the plains, the Corn Belt, temperatures kind of where they need to be. And same with precip. Now, as you get into May, that's about anywhere from a half to maybe a little shy of 3/4 of an inch of moisture. So a more normalized moisture, including parts of the northern and central plains, central Corn Belt, a little wetter into the Ohio Valley, eastern states, back to dry time for Oklahoma, Texas, and the western reaches of the country. So again, no big headlines, Mike, as we head through a good part of the month of May. Ought to be able to move forward here in outdoor work and fieldwork operations.
Take us into the month of June. Greg, does that favorable weather for most of the Corn Belt continue all the way into June?
It really does. No real excitement in order, maybe a slight north and eastward progression to the warm, to the hot, the summertime ridge. Not unusual. Cool puddle of air across areas of the Sioux, the southeastern sections of the Canadian Prairie. If you were to open up a meteorology textbook and take a look at kind of the steering currents for average or normal and typical stuff for mid to late spring, this is what you'll see. So the atmosphere kind of moving back into a neutral state. Same with the ocean waters, back to average across areas of the Pacific. So you come up with this moisture pattern. Not too bad where you need more moisture into the wheat country, far western and southern Corn Belt, down through Dixie, the southeastern part of the country. A little dry through the upper Midwest, Great Lakes areas, but about normal for moisture across the Corn Belt locales. Mike will need to keep an eye as well for areas of the Canadian Prairie with perhaps additional dryness and drought expanding there as the week wears on. We'll take a look at the full forecast, including the 4-weeker, coming on up.
Today's larger, heavier equipment can lead to more soil compaction issues. Firestone Ag IFVF tires with 82 technology maximize load capacity while minimizing soil compaction. Visit firestoneag.com to learn more. The past 7 days have seen a lot of news moving the commodity markets. Joining us this week to discuss them is Mike Zuzolo of Global Commodity Analytics. And Mike, let's start first with the grain market. Last week, of course, saw a couple of important reports from the USDA. They said 90 million acres of corn are going to go in the ground this year. Does that number seem accurate to you?
It does, Mike, and thanks for having me back. I think the problem with this year and maybe some of the issues with the planted acreage is that we forgot how big we went in last year. And, we did 310 million acres this year. We were downwards 313 million acres this year. We were down around 310 2 years ago. So we're very much within the 5-year average on the total principal crops. And as far as the corn acreage number, I think it'll sneak up. I'm at 90.6, but I think that's where it's coming in with the weather side of the equation and how much more we can get from Mother Nature. But overall, I think producers this year really aren't going to take a lot of chances like they have the past couple of years, and there's a variety of reasons for that. So I feel pretty good about the numbers right now that USDA put out.
Looking at that 90 million, Mike, in the balance sheet for 2024, does this help keep prices supported? Can this keep that 450 corn in the cards for December?
I'm glad you asked that because I was getting a lot more optimistic as we headed into April, given the winter wheat acres tightening up, given the corn acres tightening up, and putting the tightening on the supply side for 24-25 here domestically. Throw into that the mix that the Russians look like they're maybe tightening up on their supplies, a little bit harder to get exports out from a couple different companies. And we're also seeing now the South American weather is playing a negative role in production potential for the Brazilian corn crop, especially, and even a little bit of a harvest issue in some of the corn areas of Argentina. So I think overall, Mike, before HPAI came into the scene, I felt like April could be a good month to get some hedges in place on some rallies, looking at maybe this year being similar to 2014 and 2021 in terms of price action.
All right, Mike. We also saw the first crop progress report of the 2024 growing season out earlier this year. Winter wheat was reported at 56% good to excellent, way higher than last year. Mike, where does this wheat market go?
Well, I think we've priced that in. You're right. The good to excellent's about double what it was last year for the whole country. But I think there are some issues out there that could worsen the conditions, and we could start to see a drop off in April. I think that the prices, though, especially testing some major support levels in both soft red and hard red earlier this week, would suggest to me, unless we take those out, this wheat's trying to put in, I think, maybe a pre-harvest low at this point, Mike.
Mike, are you going to be looking ahead to any action in the wheat market over the summer? Should producers be getting some sales on the board now, or just wait and see?
I'm waiting for the wheat to catch up to the copper, which is making almost new 2-year highs at this point. The crude oil, which is making new 2024 highs with the RBOB unleaded. Wheat tends to like to move with those based upon my analysis, Mike. So I'd say I'm eager to see if the wheat can't generate a rally before selling anything at this point.
All right, lots to watch here as we look down the line. Mike, let's talk soybeans very quickly. That acreage number was higher. Again, that fits, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And I think this is where it goes back to if we run hard in the corn and essentially plant in the dust, we may trim those soybean acres. But we're going to have to rely more upon South American crops getting trimmed for soybeans with the acreage number USDA gave us when it came to the soy. So probably the most susceptible to downside if we don't have weather events here, if you ask me.
All right, lots going on in these markets. We'll be back with more from Mike Zuzolo of Global Commodity Analytics. Today's larger, heavier equipment can lead to more soil compaction issues. Firestone Ag IFVF tires with 82 technology maximize load capacity while minimizing soil compaction. Visit firestoneag.com to learn more. In the deluge of headlines impacting the commodity markets last week has been one about HPAI, highly pathogenic avian influenza in dairies. Mike Zuzolo of Global Commodity Analytics joins us now. Mike, this is causing a lot of uncertainty in the protein markets. Walk me through how you see this issue impacting livestock producers.
Well, it is not a situation we want to be talking about a week or two from now, Mike. I think that's the key point about these types of diseases. And the longer the news goes on, I think the harder the market's going to take it in terms of the ag commodities, because we've seen ever since 2022, 2023 highs, the demand side has been weak in the ag sector. And I think livestock's picking up on that. I think the fact that we had a mutation to a human being also elevates the importance and opens up the downside in prices potentially for both grains and livestock because of the poultry angle and the culling of poultry in Texas now. And so I think it's an extremely important piece of the demand puzzle. I'm hoping that we get past this very, very quickly, though, and we have enough official data, official statements from APHIS, FDA, USDA that allows the market to move past this as far as not hurting our potential consumption. And for the livestock sector in particular that you're asking about, we're on the heels of summer grilling season, and that is an important piece of the puzzle every year, but it even makes it more important given what we're hearing right now on the headline news.
Mike, we saw the futures market in cattle, live cattle, feeder cattle react very strongly when this news came out. But out in the countryside, auction markets, at least the reports I've heard, have stayed strong. How do we resolve this discrepancy?
That is where the real rubber hits the road. It's kind of the funds versus the fundamentals that you're describing, if you ask me, Mike. The headline news is what the funds are trading. The supply-demand fundamentals are the actual fundamentals. Now, having said that, I've noticed the negotiated cash cattle price is starting to taper off. We've lost that 190 level. We're back down in the 185, 186 level. So we are seeing a negative reaction in the cash market for the fats, at least at this point. Feeders, as you say, they haven't really dealt with this in the actual sale barns or auction barns at this point, which is a good sign. But that's something that if the fats and the feeder cash markets start to give way because this futures market continues to go lower on a continuation of this being in the news, that's what will really concern me and make me want to recommend getting some floors underneath this for the summer markets.
All right, Mike, so far we have not seen any impact from beef cattle impacting people on an HPAI front, but we have seen it now on the dairy side. As you look out, if HPAI continues to spread in dairies, could there be spillover into the cattle market?
I really think there could be, because we have to remember 10-15% of what we call in terms of dairy goes into the beef processing and goes into our beef food supply chain. And I think this is where APHIS and FDA really need to target it, just like they did with milk right now. They're recognizing the pasteurization, the fact that cattle and cows that are infected don't see that milk go into commercial production. We need to get ahead of that, in my opinion, when it comes to the slaughter side of the equation, the beef supply chain, because that the dairy side of the equation does really mean a lot to the overall beef supply going to the consumer.
That's what it all comes down to. As of now, folks, meat and milk available for purchase is safe. Continue to support those livestock producers. Mike Zuzula, Global Commodity Analytics, thanks so much for joining us this week.
Thank you, Mike. Have a great week.
Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead.
As always, Greg's been keeping track of what's developing weather-wise around the country. And Greg, as you look out at the Pacific Northwest, are you expecting more spring-like activity over the next week?
Well, over the next week or so, and then we see a pattern shift, a North American pattern shift, especially prevalent where we need it into the plains and Corn Belt locales. A lot of folks getting a little worked up here with the degree of moisture. Wish we could get more of it here in the weeks to come, where snowfall totals and moisture totals have been a little bit less than average, especially the snowpack across the Cascades. This is sort of a meager feature making its way through Yellowstone out towards the Black Hills and points on to the east, but at least we've had some semblance of moisture the past few weeks across the Dakotas, upper Midwest. More snow we've seen in some spots than really much of the official wintertime season. By the middle and late parts of the week, a nice ridge of high pressure establishing itself over the western third of the country. Some downslope winds out of Big Sky Country, a couple of snow showers and rain showers across the Canadian Prairie. Yeah, you too, you folks are still in the midst of dryness and drought, and we've got to keep an eye on that situation as we get deeper into the spring and summer season, i.e. fire concerns out there. Otherwise, warm, dry weather for the northern valleys of California into the Willamette Valley, Rogue River Basin as well. Probably the last of these El Nino-driven weather systems here. El Nino beginning to wind on down, and we'll talk about that here later on in the broadcast with the 4-week forecast. But a system out across Arizona expected to move on to the east. Ahead of it, maybe some severe weather, but behind this dry line cold front, we may be in the same situation of wind and probably some at least fire potential as well. It's ongoing there too and through West Texas. But again, here's that western ridge establishing itself over the desert southwest. Warm, dry weather for the valleys of California. 29 inches water equivalent of that snowpack across the Sierra runoff prospects look good. Cooler, drier air on the move, Mike, across much of the Plain States down through the Lone Star State later in the week.
I know last week saw some snow across northern corn growing country. Greg, is that coming to an end for the season?
We even had snow as far south as the Ohio River, right in the wake of that severe weather that came through from Carbondale to Vincennes to Evansville, all the way to Charleston, West Virginia. Might be looking at almost the same setup here as the week wears on. Again, at least modified cooler cold air and another round of rain and snow across the northern sections of the Corn Belt, upper Midwest, western Great Lakes region. I know it's getting wet here through the central and southern Corn Belt, especially higher streams and rivers. But guess what? Virtually no drought across the eastern areas and some drought improvement through the northern and western Corn Belt here over the past several weeks. A nice ridge. Again, that western ridge is expected to continue its movement into the plains. It's a progressive setup, i.e. the start of a pattern shift. Warmer, drier, the operative weather words here in the weeks to come. In the meantime, it pushes some chillier weather across eastern sections of the Corn Belt. A couple of snowflakes north up towards the Sioux. Boy, it just rampaged out of the southeastern plains across the Delta and the southeastern states up to the Ohio Valley, the severe weather, and it gets going again early to middle parts of the week. Behind this cold front, more wind for West Texas to New Mexico. And as the week wears on, again, additional showers and thunderstorms. Big improvement. We talked about Louisiana's drought situation. It's gone. Same with much of the lower Mississippi Valley, Tennessee Valley, dry weather, cooler weather from Kansas on southward in through Texas. About 10% of the corn crop is in through Kansas.
You mentioned that severe weather threat. Greg, do you see any chance for the East Coast to get some severe weather next week?
Probably so. Southern sections, the Mid-Atlantic region, northward into New England, where last week up through down eastern Maine, another nor'easter and a couple of feet of snow. And we may still see a little bit of snow up towards the Twins, the Sioux sections of the northern Great Lakes region. But it's showers and thunderstorms back into play over much of the eastern and southern Corn Belt locales. And yeah, there may be enough low cloud cover and mid-level cloud cover for the eclipse. Got to talk about that. So things may be a little complicated as you get into the southern sections and eastern sections of the Corn Belt. Better, I think, visibility with just high clouds into the plains and points on south from there. In any event, late in the week, showers, thunderstorms, snow melt for the northeast of New England, colder air up towards the Sioux, a couple of rain, snow showers, eastern Great Lakes region, dry time expected over much of the central and western Corn Belt. And again, showers and thunderstorms early to middle parts of the week. Keep an eye on that in between. Maybe some opportunities to see that solar eclipse with the proper equipment, of course. Warm, dry weather giving way to showers and thunderstorms late in the week across the southeastern states, back into high pressure in through Oklahoma and Texas.
Closed captioning for This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Pentair Hypro, a global leader in innovative spray technology for farmers for over 75 years.
If you've been plugged into the world of agronomy, over the past several years, there has seemed to be announcement after announcement after announcement about biologicals you can use on your field. They're coming in the form of yield improvements with offensive traits. They're coming with some defensive traits to help protect that crop in the field. But for many folks out there in farm country, these biologicals are a new product. But they're not entirely new. Dave Schrock, an Indiana grower who has also been in the land remediation business for some time, has been working with biologicals more than the average farmer, and for a longer time period. I had the chance to talk to him recently about his experience with biologicals then, what they're turning into, and how he's going to help tell the story about their impact on agriculture.
So Mike, I have a history in the excavating contracting business, and we used biologicals back in the 90s to clean up soil and the fuel spills and et cetera. And so I knew what biologicals could do. When they came to the farm, I was interested in using them to clean up our soils, whether it's herbicide residual or whatever. Well, we soon found out that they had fertilizer, nutrient uptake, and efficiency qualities. So that's what really has moved us toward that sector.
And so how long have you been using the on-farm biologicals in your operation?
So probably 10 years, and that's just a rough number, but quite a while. We're a little bit of out there trying things that other people aren't. But we've tried a lot of biologicals, and to be real honest with you, the results have been mixed, very mixed, until we found this product, BioPath by Mosaic, and really have been impressed with its performance.
And now, of course, going forward, Frontier Farms, you're going to be sharing the stories of the experience with biologicals. You've already shot a video. What can people learn so far, Dave?
Well, first video is about our farm and our family and what we do and how we do it. So then we will go into spring here. So right now the videos will be in preparation for spring season. As we move into spring, people will get to watch us apply biologicals and how we do that. And then as the summer progresses, they will see what we see in the field. We'll see the progress of the biologicals and the performance of them. So it's a neat program.
Let's talk about Frontier Fields. How often will videos be updated, and where can people go to see them?
So frontierfields.com, and they will be updated monthly, and there's 6 growers on there, so if you get tired of me, you can watch somebody else.
Thank you, Dave, for that update. And folks, that Frontier Fields, the show that Dave will be talking about the biologicals on, I was assured by both Dave and Mosaic that it will be a warts and all picture of how these biologicals are actually working on the farm. We're also looking ahead to new developments in the world of crop technology. Soybeans, in fact, are changing. Pioneer is releasing their Z Series soybeans, and I had the chance to talk with Liz Knutson about what they bring to the table.
Yeah, Mike, so as we make the transition from A to Z, we're thinking about why. For a lot of folks in the U.S. who have grown Pioneer brand A Series soybeans, they know what to expect. It's yield and agronomics. So when we think about making that journey from A to Z, it's all about more. More yield, more agronomics and enhanced disease protection, and more exclusive varieties. So we are so excited to bring these to farmers in 2024.
Well, let's dive into a little more details. We're getting ready to get that 24 crop in the ground. What do the numbers show from a yield perspective? What are we going to see with these soybeans?
Our already industry-leading A-Series soybeans have now been beat by 2.7 bushels to the acre. So Z-Series brings almost 3 additional bushels, which times the market price of beans. We're thinking about a $35 per acre ROI opportunity for farmers. So great opportunity to get those into your fields.
So you've got those offensive traits, the yielding traits, but there's also crop protection, disease resistance. Fill me in a little bit. What comes to the table there?
To every great soybean, we need offense and defense. The top end is great, but if we can't protect ourselves from those things out in the field that we don't have control over, that's really going to be a problem. So what we're excited about with Z-Series is more agronomic traits and improvements in nearly every score from top to bottom across. So if we think about America's #1 soybean pest with soybean cyst nematode, we're bringing 13 of our 50 new varieties with the peaking source of resistance. Adding a different a way of managing SCN besides PI 88788, trying to balance out those native traits. On top of that, we see almost a full score improvement in white mold tolerance for those east of the river. And for those west of the river concerned about IDC, iron deficiency chlorosis, we're also seeing significant gains there too. So brown stem rot, Phytophthora, I could go on, but we're very looking forward to how Z-Series can improve those tolerances for farmers.
Let's talk about what's coming out this year. What sort of range of maturities are going to be available? What sort of options are farmers going to find?
In 2024, we'll plant nearly 500,000 acres across the U.S. to Z-Series. Those will range in maturities from 00 in North Dakota to 5s and 6s in Georgia. So the full range will be available in 2025, where nearly half of our commercial volume will be available in Z-Series.
That's pretty exciting, Liz. Look out a little longer term. What else do you have coming from soybeans here at Pioneer?
The good news for Pioneer is it doesn't stop now, right? Z-Series is coming to market in 2024. We've got a long runway ahead of us. As we know, soybean farmers will continue to need innovation to fuel what they're doing. So we have a path to trait leadership through the 2040s, which we're looking forward to, E3 being a primary vehicle for that through the end of the decade. And then we'll add on additional new, novel, durable modes of action to try to help farmers with the tough solutions that maybe the problems they don't know they have today, but they will certainly find in the future.
Thank you, Liz, for that update. Folks, these Z-Series soybeans, as Liz mentioned, going to be on about 500,000 acres this year. Opportunity to get out there, take a look at them in the field, and then that full rollout getting underway for the growing season of 2025. It seems to me the fight against soybean cyst nematode is going to continue to heat up. Utilizing these new forms of varieties, these new forms of protection in the soybean crop should help save a lot of growers some heartache as these move to the future. Now stay with us, ladies and gentlemen. We'll have more coming on This Week in Agribusiness. We'll be talking agronomy, we'll be talking crawfish, and Greg will be back with weather.
Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH, solutions for every challenge, equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. According to the USDA's first crop progress report released last Monday, 2% of the U.S. corn crop is in the ground, and that's a number that's going to be climbing quickly in the coming weeks. Which makes this a perfect time to kick off a new series, Agronomy Across Your Acres, with our friends from Nutrien Ag Solutions. Joining us this week is Tyler Richardson. He's a crop consultant down around Brookfield, Missouri. And Tyler, producers are getting antsy to get in the field, but what are the ideal soil temps you recommend for corn and soybean planting?
So the baseline soil temperature would typically be 50 degrees. That's where we like to start. That's what we consider acceptable. The closer we start heading towards 60, 65, and 70, that's what really gives us a good chance to get that crop flying up out of the ground and off to a good start. Currently here today, our soil temperature is 40. The 24-hour average has been 45, so we're a little ways off, but the 10-day forecast looks good. I think we'll be trending upward into the mid-50s, around 60, probably by middle of next week. So things are heading in the right direction, and guys will be able to pull the trigger.
That's right, pull the trigger. The question is, if the weather's getting iffy, do you pull the trigger, plant a little early, Tyler, or is it best to wait until the soil conditions are right?
So every year we kind of keep looking for a silver bullet answer to that question. I think you got to take a good look in the mirror at your operation and what your goals are. You know, what tillage practices do you implement? Do you have a cover crop strategy? What crop are you planting first? And, you know, as equipment starts getting bigger, it takes less and less time. We can cover more acres. How long is it going to take you to plant your crop? If you can plant your corn crop in 5 days and your soybeans 6 to 7, and you want to be done by May 20th, you know, we've got almost 40 days in there that there'll probably be a better window come along. So we want to, with current crop prices and input prices, we want to give ourselves the best chance to maximize our ROI when we're hauling this crop field in the fall.
Absolutely. If you're going to do it right. Tyler, seed selection. How can that impact growers' decisions during this time period?
Yeah, so it goes back to what crop are you planting first. You know, the stand establishment in corn is really, really crucial. It's probably one of the most important factors in success come with riding in the combine. You know, you can look at other things. What's that seed's early tolerance to seed-borne diseases? What's its early vigor and emergence look like? You know, when we have to go into these less than ideal conditions, you know, if it's good enough to go but not ideal, I start looking towards products like 55 VC80 Dynagro. That corn just flies out of the ground and establishes itself better than about anything else I've got in my portfolio. So it's kind of a tried and true option whenever I start looking at these tough soil conditions. So there certainly seed selection has a big play and can help guide you in the right direction of what decision to make.
It certainly can. All of those ingredients need to come together for a successful planting season. Be sure to keep track of what's happening with agronomy on your acres. Tyler Richardson, Nutrien Ag Solutions, thank you so much for joining us this week.
Thank you.
And folks, you can keep up to speed and learn more at nutrienagsolutions.com.
Greg Solier is back now with his extended farm weather forecast for the nation.
Earlier in the show, Greg Solier highlighted the weather activity coming next week. It sounds like a lot of precipitation in a lot of different forms. Greg,
Yep.
Who's going to get what and when?
Just about everything but the kitchen sink. Unfortunately, that means, again, another round of severe weather, but it is that time of the year. Well, it just rampaged along that I-70 to I-64 corridor and into the Ohio Valley last week. Maybe a repeat performance as well down through Dixie. But again, we've eradicated the dryness and drought here through Louisiana, the Delta region. Big improvement this winter season in the eastern Corn Belt. Some improvement of late northern and western areas. So everyone probably another inch or two. Keep an eye on the severe stuff. This will be translating east with time. Scattered moisture down through areas of Florida. This is probably the last of any real organized moisture across the western states, primarily early in the week, with some mountain locales, Cascades needing another inch or two of water equivalency snow out there on the higher peaks.
Greg, as you look out to the week of April 15th, you've mentioned a pattern shift. Does that start to pull temperatures warmer at all?
It does. A pattern shift into maybe a little more steadfast, more seasonal, longer lasting. Not these ups and downs, and every week you're swinging temperatures by some 20 to 40 degrees. So the last of the trough, if you will, finally progressive and beginning to move on out. For a change, more normalized temperatures across the heartland. Warmth over the southeastern part of the country from the Missouri back westward. Readings a few degrees above average, and a retreatment finally finally, of that cool to cold puddle of air. Meanwhile, precipitation is much, much better, especially as it applies where we've had significant moisture and especially outdoor work, maybe some early season field work in the western Corn Belt. Not necessarily good news for the Canadian Prairie and the upper Midwest. This will be an area that needs to be watched here in the coming weeks and months again for fires and any severe weather and wet weather is through the eastern states and the deep south and southeastern sections of the country as well, heading through mid-April.
Well, as you take us into that last full week of April, Greg, what do you see temperature-wise?
Not bad. Warming up, some warmth in soils, especially over the western Corn Belt. Nice ridge of high pressure over the western parts of the states. A hint of maybe some early summer heat in the desert southwest. Nice little prod of cool air into the northeast New England. But note the jet stream pattern arcing like this as opposed to coming in from the south and southwestern parts of the country. So when you take a look at that upper air configuration, you get this, and here you go. Once those wet grounds ease on up and tile lines continue to do their work, there should be some degree of field work over the heartland. Back into the plain states, wet weather is welcome through Oklahoma and Texas, southeastern sections of the country, and into the Pacific Northwest, dry as you expect in the southwestern reaches of the country.
That favorable planting weather continue into that first week in May?
By and large, we think so. Look at the warm ridge of high pressure up aloft, warming of soils, drying of soils. We think at a steady pace, not where they turn rock hard solid. So yeah, things ought to be moving here across the heartland, above warmth across the southeastern part of the country. A little troughiness over the western part of the country will get you this. Some moisture in the Pacific Northwest, where again it was lacking this wintertime this season. Wet weather, the last of El Nino, and these weak disturbances on the weakening southern branch of the jet through Oklahoma, southeastern parts of the country, and through Georgia and Florida. Meanwhile, again, high pressure, sinking air, plenty of dry time, and maybe plenty of opportunity for outdoor work and field work across much of the Corn Belt.
Our Farm Progress Roundup is brought to you by Brandt Industries. Lead the field with Brandt's lineup of highly effective and efficient high-speed discs and land rollers. Visit brandt.ca for more. With our national team of editors and writers, Farm Progress covers a lot more than just the grain markets. Rainey Rapp, a senior writer at Delta Farm Press, recently dug into the unrest in the crawfish industry in Louisiana. Rainey, thank you so much for joining us and fill us in. What's happening down there in crawfish production?
Absolutely. So it's not a great situation this year. They're having about 10% of their normal production, particularly in southwest Louisiana, where the height of Louisiana's crawfish production comes from. Crawfish are typically grown alongside rice. And in Louisiana, that's about 374,000 acres per year of crawfish produced by rice farmers. It's about a $300 million industry. And so a 10% production, especially because Louisiana grows most of the nation's crawfish, is a big wake-up call to both the farmers and consumers that are looking to eat some crawfish this season.
Absolutely, Rainey. Now, you mentioned this has been kind of a slow-moving disaster for producers in that state. What's the cause for the massive drop in production?
So Louisiana had a pretty bad drought last year, which all of rice is irrigated for the most part. So it sounds funny to say that the drought was partially the cause. Crawfish normally burrow in the off season once the rice fields are drained. And this year, the drought was so severe that there was a lot of ground cracking, and that led to their moisture in the crawfish's burrows drying out, which essentially killed the largest portion of the crawfish. So a lot of farms will have zero production this year. The farms that fared the best will probably have around 20% production, according to Mark Shirley, who I talked to, is the LSU ag specialist for crawfish in that region.
So, Rainey, seeing producers at 0 to maybe 20% of expected production, that's a big hit to the economic bottom line. How are farmers going to recover from this? Did you get any insight?
Right. It's going to be difficult, especially because if farmers need to restock, they have to purchase crawfish from the live market. There's not a seed crawfish market the way there would be for another commercial crop. So they will have to purchase crawfish, which right now is more than double what it cost last year on the live market. In order to help that, some senators from Louisiana have introduced what they call the Crawdad Act, which will help farmers basically receive financial aid through ELAP payments.
Okay, so that's pending there in Congress. In the meantime, farmers
Yes.
are just going to have to do their best. It sounds like, Rainey. Are they encouraged that the situation might be improving for this next year?
Yes, as long as we receive rain. I drove through Louisiana last week, actually, from the top of the state down to Alexandria, and it was much, much wetter this year than it was last year. So we'll hope that they keep receiving rain, that they can restock their ponds, and have a better year next year.
Absolutely. Get those crawfish boils back into full swing. Folks, you can read Rainey's full article at farmprogress.com.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, where we spotlight another great American farm tractor. This weekend at Max's Tractor Shed, we answer a complaint from viewers. Max's Tractor Shed is brought to you by Mystic Lubricants. Mystic Lubricants producers are made to make it last. Well, every Sunday at church, a couple of friends in Indiana, Stanley and Max, get together to compare notes on what they've seen that weekend in Max's Tractor Shed on This Week in Agribusiness. And Stanley reached out to me the other day and he said, you don't show us the whole tractor. Well, there's a reason for that many weeks. Sometimes that picture taken from a distance of the entire tractor doesn't really show up well on high definition television. The picture will pixelate, so it doesn't look very good. That's why we go in tight sometimes when we can to get an up-close shot of parts of the tractor. But in the future, we'll try to do better. Here's a John Deere D. Oh, you get to see the whole thing of this tractor made 100 years ago. It's owned by the Althouse brothers in Illinois, and I saw it at the Sublet Farm Toy Show just a few days ago, walking around it with Alex Leffelman, who did a tremendous restoration of that tractor. I said, it smells like fresh paint. He said it is. Restored in the 11th hour, just ahead of the Farm Toy Show. A wonderful restoration, by the way. I didn't reach out and touch it, but you could smell that it was fresh. That tractor owned by the Althouse brothers at Sublet, Illinois. There you have it. Stanley and Max, you saw the whole thing. You get to see tractors from every angle, all parts of them, when you bid on Big Iron Auctions. Here's Mark Stock's weekly report.
Well, hello, Max. Big Iron has a huge sale on April the 10th. One of the featured sellers is Van Wall Equipment, Inc., with various locations across Iowa. They'll be selling a 2022 John Deere N530C 30-foot air seeder. They've got a John Deere 9570 RT track tractor selling and a 2020 John Deere 8R 340 mechanical front tractor. Oak Valley Dairy is in Burley, Idaho. They'll be selling a Massey Ferguson 2190 big square baler with an accumulator and a Peterbilt 337 truck with a Schuler feed mixer. Circle E Ranch from Stewart, Nebraska will sell 106 items, including 3 John Deere 6120M mechanical front tractors, one with a loader and grapple fork. Pearson Management LLC in Chase, Kansas will sell an Apache self-propelled sprayer and a Case IH 9230 four-wheel drive tractor and many more items. And Max, on April the 12th, Van Pelt Ranch will sell to the highest bidder, 5,058 acres in Banner County, Nebraska. And on April the 25th, Greg and Melinda Vilwalk will sell 6,242 acres of Brown County, Nebraska ranch land. Go to bigiron.com for all the machinery and land selling the month of April.
Our FFA Chapter Tribute is brought to you by Pioneer, developing new generations of seed innovations for new generations of farmers. Pioneer, what's next happens here. And we love meeting that next generation of American agriculturalist. This week, we're talking with Emma Humphreys. She's serving as the Iowa State FFA reporter. And Emma, thank you so much for talking with us this week.
Yeah, of course. Love to be here.
What was it that got you interested in FFA in the first place?
I have grown up surrounded by agriculture my whole life. My parents were in FFA, my grandparents were in it. So I just kind of grew up knowing that my place would be in the ag room, and it sure was. So just kind of started taken off in the contest and really found my passion in it. So decided to take it as far as I could.
And that means state officer service. Emma, of course, we're gearing up in the state of Iowa for the convention. What kind of preparations does the officer team need to do for the big FFA state convention?
There is a lot of preparation that goes on behind the scenes. It's really cool to be in the position that my team and I are in, just because we've never seen everything that goes on in the background before. So we each have a few certain items that we take care of, whether that be keynote speakers or getting workshops lined up. There's a lot of different things that go into it. I've been telling people that you truly do not understand how much work goes on behind the scenes unless you're in our position or have been before. It's not like we show up and it's all there ready for us. We truly work together to get everything squared away and make sure that it can be the best convention that it can.
And that is coming up April 14th to the 16th there in Ames, Iowa. Emma, as you look out long term, do you hope to find a career in the ag industry?
Yes, of course. I hope to be somewhere back in Southeast Iowa. You know, I'm a big home girl, so I'd like to be back home where I grew up, but I'm majoring in ag communications, so somewhere public relations.
Fantastic. Emma, well, we always need a good voice out there advocating for agriculture. We wish you the best of luck in your future.
Thank you.
Colby Ag Tech is brought to you by Copperhead Ag Products. Visit copperheadag.com for more information. The temperatures are getting a little bit warmer. Springtime is in the air, which means it's time for spring cleaning. That's a job Chad Colby wants to do once, and he wants to do it right. And to do that, he had to upgrade some equipment.
Well, on this week's tech segment, I got to show you my latest purchase. Yes, I finally broke down and did it, and I bought a Hotsy. Matt Redmond has joined me. Matt, we had one on the farm when I was a kid, and it was such a huge jump to go from cold water to hot. Talk a little bit about the system I got. I'm curious because it looks very familiar to the one we had years ago.
Yeah, Chad, this here is the 555 SS. It's 110 volt, 2.2 gallons a minute at 1300 PSI. And like you said, hot water. You can wash a little bit longer and make it so it really works for you.
You know, talk to people that maybe haven't experienced hot water. I think one of the great things you guys do are on-farm demos, and I'd encourage people to do that because you can have 4 gallons a minute, 5,000 PSI, and this little tiny Hotsy right here will do circles around that. Talk about that.
Sure. I think the main thing that comes down to is cold water. We're pushing our grease, we're pushing our grime, whereas hot water, we're cutting it and you're getting that better shine and better look in the end. And you're doing it with less so you can wash all day and not hurt.
Yeah, that's right. Well, the other thing too is it's really impressive to hear some of the information about the coil. Talk a little bit about that.
So with our coil here, there's over 120 feet of Schedule 80 pipe and 3 pancakes, which allows us to keep our heat consistent. And so once we fire up that burner and we set our temperature and our thermostat, it's going to get there in about 40 seconds and stay there, and that thermostat's going to keep you right where you want to be.
Well, obviously they make these in a lot of different sizes, stationary, big units, but I think the big thing is on-site service.
Absolutely.
If you have questions about this, reach out to your local Hotsy dealer. Ours in Princeton, Illinois was gracious enough to bring this down, and what I learned is this is normal for you guys. So if you have an issue, they'll come right out and fix it. Matt, I appreciate it, and to be honest with you, I cannot wait to get this thing into use. No more car wash for me anymore.
Sounds good, Chad.
For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
Thank you, Chad, for that update. I've got a feeling Chad is going to be a busy guy, making sure every single thing he owns is sparkling clean with that fancy new Hotsy pressure washer. Thank you so much, Chad, for that update. And folks, stick around. When we come back, we'll dig into what we know about this HPAI infection in America's dairy herd. For the past several months in the Southern Plains, some dairy herds have reported a mystery illness that was reducing milk production by their cows. Veterinarians were stumped and they performed lots of tests. Well, last Monday, those tests came back positive for HPAI, highly pathogenic avian influenza, the same bird flu that's wreaked havoc on the global poultry industry. So far, we know that dairies in at least 6 states have cows that have infections of HPAI, and more tests are being done right now on cows in other states. One person has become ill with bird flu. This was an employee at a Texas dairy that was maintaining close contact with the animal. They did not get sick from the milk or from meat, but the USDA is continuing to track this scenario. This is very fast moving, and the facts on the ground are being verified and tested while we talk, so these facts may change over the coming weeks. But as of now, USDA has come out with some recommendations for livestock producers to do their best to improve biosecurity in their herds. They do note that newly acquired cattle should be separated or isolated when they're brought into the pasture, avoid housing multiple species of animals together, and limit non-production animal access to farm areas. It's imagined that perhaps a cat ate an infected bird and then traveled into the dairy. That could be one route of infection. USDA also wants cattle producers to be vigilant and watching their herds. When it comes to handling livestock, they've noted that USDA will not be issuing any federal quarantine orders, nor is APHIS recommending any state regulatory quarantines. However, some states have put some restrictions on dairy cattle movement, so if you are in the dairy industry, do be sure to check with your state's regulators before you bring more cows into the herd. We do know right now that milk and meat available for the public are safe. The milk from infected cows is being tested and destroyed, and to date, no beef cattle have tested positive for HPAI. Continue to support your local livestock and dairy producers, folks. These next couple of weeks could be a challenge as the market tries to figure out what's happening with this fast-moving situation. Be sure to join us next week for This Week in Agribusiness, folks. We'll see you then. Take care.
This Week in Agribusiness has been brought to you by Case IH. Solutions for every challenge. Equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by 22 Creative Group and has been a presentation of Farm Progress Broadcast. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.